One today, I have the honor of being able to speak to author Brunonia Barry, and we're going to be talking about her new book called The Fifth Petal. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thank you, Michelle.
I love the cover of this book, okay? It's what drew me to the book initially, and then I looked into it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so right up my alley. I have never read a historical fiction book about Salem, so right away I wanted to read it. And
Thank you. I love the cover, too.
what a great job. I mean, everybody says that I'm a cover person, and I am. I think a lot of people are anyway, but it's just beautiful. I love it. And like I said, I never read historical fiction about Salem, and I was like, you know what? I want to know more about this. I've read a lot of historical fiction, but you are a historical reader's dream. There was so much research in this book. I learned so much. I was thrilled.
Oh, well, now I'm thrilled. Thank you.
I was going to say, all your hard work, right? I mean, that's what you're going for, right?
Well, it's funny. I live in Salem, and there are so many historians here. You really better get it right, because they'll come to your door if you don't. You know?
That's funny. You know, I was watching an interview of you, and I heard you say that there are actually more witches in Salem now than back in 1692 when they were trying to prove that there were a lot of witches in Salem.
Oh, it's so true.
That is so interesting because I never thought of it like that. You know,
well,
like
it's become a safe haven, really, because people think this is the last place it could happen again. And, of course, it is happening elsewhere in the world, not so much in this country, but in other places. And I think it has attracted a lot of pagans in particular, but also practicing witches. And we think we know of about 3,000 who are members of the Witches Educational Council, but there are a whole lot more. So it's an interesting place culturally because that's a religion like any other. So just one of the many religions in Salem.
Yeah, and I like that you say it like that because I think a lot of people, I'm from Pennsylvania, okay, so that is not part of our,
right.
maybe, but not that I know of, and I've lived here my whole life and in Allentown, eastern side of Pennsylvania, and so when you say it like that, it's like it's almost more of a normal thing there, but it's not something, around here it's like people are scared. I think that you would find that people would be scared of that, but if they really looked into it, they would understand that it's not something to be scared of. No,
it's really an earth-based polytheistic religion that, goes way back. And particularly here, different pantheons are worshipped by pagans. But here, it's in particular the Celtic pantheon. So, anyone with an Irish background, as I do, has a bit of history in at least hearing about this. The pre-Christian days in Ireland, for example, if your relatives go back so far. So I've heard about it, but I didn't until I moved to Salem. I grew up. I was born in Salem, and then I was away for quite a while, and we moved back to take care of my parents. And when I came back, it had become a haven for pagans from all over the world, actually. And I think it's just it's a caution. Our history is a cautionary tale, and in this book in particular, I was wondering what a modern-day witch hunt would look like. And of course, it wouldn't be the same at all. But who do we demonize now?
Yeah.
So
right, right, and I saw this quote that it's really interesting as I'm reading books, and I was reading and listening to your book, and I love the woman who did the audio. Because I'm big on whisper sync, because that way I can live my life and still, always be listening and or reading a book. And her voice was so awesome. I mean, it really led to the story. Okay,
it did.
I found myself
she was
more. Yeah, I mean, I love that when I go back to the audio when I don't have to, just because I like the person's voice so
That's
much.
Great. That's great to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, and so what I do is I have a notebook and I carry around, and when I hear something or see a line that I love, I write it down. And then I saw that I was like, oh, everybody liked this line in the book. But for those of the people out there that haven't heard of this, I'm going to repeat it because to me, it embodies the whole theme of the book, if you want to say. There's a theme. And it says, Once you start demonizing groups of people, when you make them other, you can justify doing just about anything you want to them, can't you? Look at history if you don't believe me. And look what we're going through right now. If that doesn't...
It's so true. It always fits. And that's one of the things I like about living in our history that we do here, because, we're always aware of it. But that is the line, that's my favorite line of the book, actually. That does sum up everything I was trying to say. So thank you for choosing it.
Well, I always like to ask authors, like, when you were writing it, because in order to make a quote, perfect, the word, you miss a word here or there and it changes the whole thing. And that's why I like to give credit to it, because I know how much work you put into that line. And like, when you were writing it, were you thinking, like, this is the line, like, this is going to be it, this is what people are going to love?
I didn't know that, except that as it came out of, Anne's mouth, one of the characters in the book, I thought, oh, that's it. I'd been writing it for a while and knew what it was to me, but that she could speak it so plainly, I thought was great, and probably only someone from that culture could do that. But it is, it crosses cultures. It's amazing and ubiquitous, I would say.
Yes.
So it was really nice to be able to say it. Often authors can't say it in a line. But that was also picked by the Concord Bookstore when I was doing author appearances, and they said, whatever you do, make sure you read this line at all of your appearances.
Oh, did they say that?
So I think it was, and I hadn't thought of it. It was, it was in the middle of the book, and I was trying really hard to explain what the book was about, because it had so much to it, 3 different mysteries, etc. So so that was perfect, and I'm glad you chose it.
Yeah, I just think it's always interesting to me to see that I agree with the other people, like on Goodreads, and they picked it, and I saw other reviews, and I was like, oh, okay, so I was right on. Like, other people picked it up just as easily as I picked it up, so that always makes me happy too.
Well, it makes me happy.
That makes me happy. So you are a descendant. I wanted to talk about this because I find it so interesting. I don't know. I've been just trying to now figure out my ancestry, and that you were a descendant from one of the original witches in 1692.
Yes, actually from 3 of the accused. Rebecca Nurse and her 2 sisters were all accused. But I'm close to Rebecca Nurse. That's, but that Town family, Towne. So, yes, and we also think, and this is kind of a funny little family detail, but we have an accuser on our family tree. We always say hanging from our family tree as well, but no one wants to talk about that person. So I don't know who that is. So I've done a little more research there. It's, and these days it's better to have one of the victims than one of the accusers.
Exactly. And when I think about what we learned in school, which was the extent of my knowledge about it, it's like it was kind of just glossed over. It's like, oh yeah, back, at this time everybody was afraid of witches, and you look into it a little bit more and you find out that it didn't take much for somebody to think you were a witch. Okay?
No, it's really true. Yes, it's really true. And the character of Rose in the book, everything kind of parallels the 1692 witch trials in the book. So I was trying to draw a comparison to a particular victim, Sarah Good, because she was probably mentally ill. She was definitely, she and her second husband still owed the debts that her first husband had incurred, and which is the way they did things then. And it reduced them to begging in the streets. But she was so outspoken and, as I said, probably mentally ill, that if she didn't get food or money from people whose houses she knocked on the doors of, she would curse them. And so she was an obvious victim of, she would be accused by many people, actually. So I thought Rose's character in this day could kind of parallel Sarah.
Yeah, I loved, my favorite thing about this book was how you used the past and then 25 years ago, and then kind of the present, and going back and forth between those through time periods. And I'm usually attracted to books like that, but I thought you did such a great job of that, of understanding, I should say. If anybody really wants to understand what it's like to be in Salem, and, during any of those time frames, you did such a good job explaining it and making me feel like I was there.
Oh,
and,
that's great. That's
yeah.
great to hear.
I like I said before, I learned so much about it, but it wasn't like obvious. It's like it was in the story, and then it would be just trickled in, these different things, and you're like, look at that, look at like the trees. I loved when you wrote about the trees. Okay.
Well, I have a special place in my heart for trees in general, but I thought it would, the oak trees are quite special in this town, I think. But also we found out, for years people in Salem thought there really was a gallows hill and gallows were built. Well, in my research and that of other historians, it really, according to Salem's records, gallows was never built. They kept records of every cent they spent on anything, and there was never anything allocated for that. So it came down to it being presumed to be an oak tree that they hanged people from. So that was one of the first things that really struck me when I was researching the book. And then there are some very special oaks in town, and I just got a little bit obsessed with them and thought, well, this is what Rose would do. And then this wonderful research for the book, The Hidden Life of Trees. Have you read that?
No.
It's a small book, but the man who wrote it had been researching and writing papers on this for quite a while. And it's very special, and it talks about how trees communicate to each other through their root systems and fungal systems that run along the roots. And really, they became a metaphor for what society should be because they help each other out when they need nutrients. And, they're not, an oak can help an elm, and, there's no dividing line between types of tree. So I just got obsessed with the trees in the story, and I thought that's what Rose would solve the secret of, well, there are a couple mysteries in the story. It solves one, it doesn't solve the other, but
I don't know, it did make me, I'm looking out my window, and when I was reading it, I was looking at the trees out there, and I was like, it kind of makes you look at trees differently. I never really, I'm a big flower person. I love fresh flowers in my house. Okay. And yes. I don't know why. Like, everybody's like, you spend so much money on flowers. Why do you love flowers? Because I just do. And I just feel like I love the scent of them. No particular one. Just like I feel like it brings energy in. And,
right.
and my grandmother used to always have plants around, and she would, she was really big into talking to her plants and saying how much energy they brought to her house. And now with reading this, I'm like, I never really thought about trees before. Like what they contribute to.
I think it's true. And, I was really inspired when we lived in California for a while. We used to visit Sequoia and Kings Canyon Park. Mm-hmm. And standing in the middle of those sequoias will really change you. I think it's, if you're ever thinking about nature-based religions, that's a good place to go stand. These are the oldest living things on Earth. So it's really quite astounding.
Do you feel, like, is there something you feel or hear?
Well, I think it's an energy, just kind of a peaceful energy.
A peaceful
one. And in this day and age, it's really lovely to go read under a tree.
Right.
Right. It just kind of centers you or something.
Right.
So.
And, where I am, they're taking, the developments.
Yeah.
Like they're just bulldozing any kind of woods that we had, as I had growing up, just don't exist anymore. Which is a shame. You kind of have to go to a park if you, like a state park to get any kind of, sense of being. I think that's also why when you go for a hike in the woods, you feel like all that oxygen and energy, and you come out and you're like, whoa. That was just crazy, You
do. And I think that's the same with plants. In the house, I think the first thing you can think of is oxygen and maybe negative ions or something. They're the same feeling you get near a big body of water.
Right.
That sort of wonderful, peaceful feeling.
Well,
that you
this
don't
book,
get from the news anymore.
that's right. So I stay away from the news. That
Yes. Oh,
that
absolutely.
takes away from all your other, positive energy as a
Yes, exactly.
So this book, I mean, it's a big book, and it's something that you just, I'm a fast reader, okay, but I didn't want to read it fast. For what I do here, I need to, get through books, and this is a book that I was like, no, once I started it, I was like, no, I want to savor it. I don't want to be like, oh, I read this book in record amount of time, yay me. I wanted to be like, no, I wanted to experience the book. And I've heard I actually saw other reviews that people were saying the same thing, and that must make you so happy because I saw this one author that I read her book in 4 hours and she was not happy. Like I didn't realize, I was like, I read this book in 4 hours, it was that good. She's like, you know how long that took me to write?
This one took 5 years to write, so I'm glad you savored it. That's wonderful. It's interesting. I would love to give people the experience of Salem because I love this place, and we moved. I grew up on Salem Harbor, but in Marblehead, which is the town next door. But Salem was always what intrigued me, and then we lived on the West Coast for a while. And when we moved back, we thought, what's as open and unusual as Los Angeles, but very New England, and Salem was the place. It has some similarities in terms of its. I think it's just the tourists that it attracts. It's very international, which is nice. But you never get out from under the what is historic. So, you're informed by history on every street corner. So it's a very interesting place, and I would love people to have the experience of what it's like to really be here, because I think it takes a while to know it, and Halloween won't do it.
Right. And I also saw that you'd answered a question about how, and I really wanted you to repeat it because I didn't write it down, about what you thought about Salem. It was something about, like, it wants to escape its history, but won't let it, or something like that.
It's
and
true.
I didn't get to write it down because I wasn't near a pen. So I think
it's a question that you ask of characters. What does the character want, and what's keeping them from getting it? And I treat Salem as a character in my novels. And Salem's changed a lot from one novel to the next because it's, spanned 15 years. And so things have changed, but the one thing that hasn't changed ever is that question. And so I always ask, what does Salem want? And the answer is always forgiveness. And then what's keeping them from getting it? Well, we rely on history, our history, the dark history, for tourism, which is economically what has revived this whole little city. So, you can't, you'd love to forget the history. You'd love to move on. But, economically that's not feasible. And there are so many people making a living on that, you don't want to deny anyone making a living. So it's an interesting thing. So rather than escape it, I think we're learning to embrace it for, there are many parts of it. It's not just the witch history, but that is why people come. And now the mayor says, she was complaining a while back, we had a bad 6 months several hundred years ago, and no one's ever going to let us forget it. And now it's bring them for the history and then show them what else we've got. So.
Right. I mean, I was thinking in my head, like, name another, part of the country that has had that kind of a stigma to it. And it's kind of difficult. Not that there hasn't been, because of course, but that it's been like that defined. You say Salem, people say witch trial. Like it's definitely, that is the embodiment of the name of that city. Okay,
it's really true. Yeah, it's true, and it's funny because I do. I've been doing a joint class with a teacher, a professor in Dusseldorf. I'm doing it from a distance, but and they were talking about how many more witch trials, of course, there were in Europe, and I just read and reviewed a book about that. And there were thousands, but this happened about 100 years later, and it happened in the, quote, New World. And so I think there's just no escaping it. People really do know about it. And there's a generational guilt that really runs through the old families here. And strangely, I think the students in Dusseldorf were the only ones who really got that sense of, well, it wasn't me, but this happened in my family. So this is it's interesting to, my books have been translated many times, but it's interesting to see what international audiences think of Salem, and they all know us. So
isn't that interesting? It's not just here that knows, it's worldwide. That's,
yes.
I find that fascinating.
Well, and they come from all over the world to see it. I mean, it's not
right.
Like it's still going on, but yeah.
Right. Exactly. They actually want to see it. I want to. I mean, I have never been. I've been to Boston, and it was for something very specific. But I always think, I want to go to Massachusetts just to see the history. I want to just visit. When I've
let me know if you do.
I will.
I'll show you around.
Oh, that would be awesome. So this book took you 5 years, and I definitely can tell. I mean, like I said, the research was it was beautiful. I loved it. And are you working on anything right now?
I am. I'm writing. I'm working on two things actually, and I've taken a break from one to work on another. But I'm working on a sequel to The Lace Reader called Bone Lace,
nice.
and that's going to take a while because it's kind of the end of that story. And it's the first real sequel I will have done. But then in the meantime, for the next book that comes out, I'm writing a book called Night Blind Island. And it's 4 women and their 13-year-old daughters go out to an island for a weekend that turns a little scary. So it's a mystery as well. But someone said, I said it turns a nightmarish, and they said, well, mothers and their 13-year-old daughters can be a nightmare. So I don't know, but it's a lot of fun. It's different.
Yeah, I have to tell everybody, the reason I didn't want to dive too much into this book is because I don't like to give away any spoilers, and this has so many along the way because it's just that's how it reads when you're like, you have so many of those moments. But let me tell you, the ending is so worth all those little moments that you think what's going to happen. So,
that's so great.
Yeah, I mean, I try to talk around thrillers because I don't want to give away anything. So I try to talk, it sounds weird sometimes, but I just try to talk around it so that I'm not giving anything away. But the ending is just amazing. And also, everybody on Amazon, I've seen that everywhere, and you must just be thrilled at the amount of attention this book has gotten and how much people love it. So it must
and there's
make
sort of a build to it. It's getting more and more as we go, which is just what you want to have happen. So
right.
We just got chosen by Strand Magazine. I think the magazine's about to come out, but as they have the 10 top mysteries of the year, and they chose it as the number 1, which is great because this is the first real mystery I've written. So
I saw it all over the place. Everybody was, when they were saying, "Oh, my top 5 books to read," coming up on my list. It was always there, and I was like, I have to read this. I looked it up, and I'm like, yes, I want to read this book. I love the cover. I loved everything about it, and I was not disappointed. So
thank you.
So it's been really nice talking to you. I'm so glad we had this chat, and I'm going to get this out, and everybody will see that your links are underneath this video, so they can find the Amazon link, and your website's amazing. Go to her website because you will love it. And it also goes into her other books and talks about them, and she's got, nice little bio on there. I love your website. You did a great job.
Thank you so much.
So,
great talking to you.
It was, and I can't wait to read the next one. Because I'm going to go back now. I'm going to go back because I did not read The Lace Reader, but I'm going back so that I can read the next one and understand what's going on.
That's great. It's all standalone stories, but that you will see some recurring characters. So.
Absolutely a standalone.
See where they came from.
Yeah, exactly. I can't wait. So thank you, Brunonia. I almost said your name wrong. Sorry.
Call me Bru. Everybody calls me Bru.
Oh, everybody calls you Bru? Okay, I like that. Well, you have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.